Let's be honest, boundaries are hard, especially when we've been conditioned to believe that being nice means tolerating behavior that chips away at our self-worth. But there's something profoundly powerful about the quiet choices a wise woman makes, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. Today, I want to talk about the courage it takes to say, "This no longer serves me." The kind of courage that doesn't shout, doesn't slam doors, doesn't need validation, it just exits. Because here's what the research shows, and maybe more importantly, here's what real life confirms. The most grounded, wholehearted people are also the most boundaried. A wise woman learns that protecting her peace is not selfish, it's sacred, and sometimes the most compassionate thing she can do for herself and others is to silently let go of the people who are not meant to walk with her. When we talk about wisdom, especially in the context of relationships, boundaries, and self-worth, it's easy to romanticize the idea without confronting the discomfort that comes with it. Wisdom isn't always arrive with applause or support from others. Sometimes wisdom shows up in the quietest decision we make, the one where we choose ourselves, not in ego, but in peace. And one of the hardest but most necessary acts of wisdom a woman can make is cutting off the consistently disrespectful. Disrespect can be loud, yes, but more often than not, it's subtle. It's in the offhand jokes that make you shrink. It's in the way your ideas are brushed off in conversations, the constant interruption, the way your presence is treated as optional. It's in the people who remember you only when they need something, who don't celebrate your wins but grow noticeably silent when you shine. It's in the dismissive tone, the way your boundaries are pushed, tested, or straight up ignored. And yet it's so easy to overlook these red flags when we've been trained to prioritize keeping the peace over protecting our peace. We're taught, especially as women, to be nice, to be likable, to give people the benefit of the doubt. So we stay, we explain ourselves, we make excuses for other people's behavior. We tell ourselves, they're just stressed, they didn't mean it, maybe we're being too sensitive. We normalize the way they make us feel small, doubting our own reactions, watering ourselves down to keep the relationship afloat. But here's the truth. Someone who consistently disrespects you is telling you over and over again who they are and what you're worth to them. Disrespect doesn't require yelling or name calling. Sometimes it looks like a lack of effort. Sometimes it's the constant rescheduling, the forgotten promises, the emotional unavailability disguised as busyness. Sometimes it's the way they don't listen, or how they turn everything into a competition, or how they always seem to be there when it benefits them but vanish when it's your turn to need support. And over time, these things accumulate. It's like tiny paper cuts that eventually start to bleed. It drains you, it makes you question yourself, it pulls you further and further away from your authentic self. A wise woman sees these patterns. She doesn't wait for a dramatic explosion to justify her exit. She recognizes that consistent disrespect is enough, not just for her to speak up, but to step away, not with a long speech or a dramatic confrontation, but with quiet clarity, with a decision that says, I deserve better than this, and I don't need to prove it to anyone but myself. That's the silent strength of wisdom. It doesn't always explain itself. It doesn't need a fight to be understood. It simply walks away from what no longer honors who she is. Cutting someone off who consistently disrespects you doesn't mean you hate them, doesn't mean you wish them harm. It means you are no longer willing to allow their energy in your life. It means you are choosing to stop negotiating with people who can't see your value. You are choosing not to sit at tables where love feels like a battlefield, and your voice has to be raised to be heard, because once you start healing, once you start growing, once you start understanding your worth, you realize that silence isn't weakness, it's strength. It's the sound of boundaries being built. It's the sound of peace taking up space. It takes courage to recognize that not everyone deserves access to you. That includes the people you've known for years, the ones who say all the right things but show up with the wrong energy, the ones who only support you when it's convenient for them, and especially the ones who make you feel like you're too much for wanting to be respected. It takes courage to walk away from familiarity, but wisdom teaches us that comfort is not the same thing as respect. You can be comfortable in dysfunction. You can be used to being treated less than and still deserve better. There's a difference between someone who messes up and takes responsibility and someone who consistently crosses lines and expects you to be okay with it. A wise woman sees the difference. She understands that patterns speak louder than apologies, that consistency in behavior matters more than consistency in excuses. She learns to discern energy, not just words. She doesn't wait for someone to change when they've already shown they have no intention of doing so. Disrespect chips away at your identity. It doesn't just affect your relationships, it affects your confidence, your ability to trust yourself, your emotional health, your dreams. When you're surrounded by people who don't honor your worth, you begin to question it. You begin to wonder if you're asking for too much, if maybe you're the problem. And that's the lie disrespect wants you to believe, that your standards are the issue, not their behavior. But wisdom silences that lie. Wisdom reminds you that asking for respect isn't demanding, it's foundational. It's not a luxury, it's the bare minimum. Choosing to cut off the consistently disrespectful isn't about being bitter, it's about being better. Better aligned with your purpose, better supported by your circle, better at loving yourself the way you deserve to be loved. It's about stepping into your worth without waiting for someone else to validate it. It's about finally understanding that love in its healthiest form never makes you question your value. And anyone who does, over and over again, is simply not meant to go with you where you're going next. A wise woman doesn't make loud exits. She doesn't throw shade. She doesn't need to burn bridges with rage. She just stops showing up in spaces where her presence isn't honored. She withdraws from environments that don't feed her soul. She doesn't announce her departure because the people who noticed her silence were the ones who paid attention all along, and the ones who didn't, they were never really there for her to begin with. There's a quiet, heartbreaking truth that many wise women come to learn through experience, and it's this: not everyone who is present is emotionally available. And while love may be loud and exciting in the beginning, connection without emotional presence is ultimately empty. A wise woman, one who has fought for her peace, healed from her wounds, and grown tired of emotional guessing games, learns that she must cut off the emotionally unavailable, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Emotional unavailability can wear 1,000 masks. It can look like charm, consistency, intellect, even kindness. These individuals may be physically present, say the right things, even show moments of care or attention. But the connection never deepens. There's always a wall, a distance, a void you keep trying to close but never quite reach across. You start to notice that every time you open up, they retreat. Every time you share something vulnerable, they change the subject or deflect. You bring your full self, and they meet you with fragments, safe, edited pieces of who they are, never the whole truth. A wise woman sees this pattern and understands that no matter how much love she pours in, she cannot force someone to be emotionally present. She cannot convince someone to show up fully if they've chosen to live behind their walls. And while it may not be abusive, it is still damaging. Because emotional unavailability creates confusion. You constantly wonder where you stand. You question if you're too much for wanting clarity or too needy for wanting consistency. You find yourself stuck in emotional limbo, giving more and more of yourself while receiving less and less in return. There's a cost to staying connected to people who can't connect back. Over time, it chips away at your joy. It dulls your spirit. You find yourself overthinking texts, replaying conversations, trying to decode mixed signals and half-hearted promises. It's exhausting, and yet, so many of us stay, hoping that if we're patient enough, understanding enough, loving enough, they'll eventually open up. But the truth is, someone's emotional availability is not your responsibility. It's a choice they have to make. And if they consistently choose distance, avoidance, or detachment, that is not a challenge for you to fix. It's a sign for you to walk away. A wise woman knows that silence from someone who matters should never feel louder than their presence. She knows that communication is not just about words, but about energy, how someone shows up, how they hold space for her emotions, how they respond when she's vulnerable, whether they are present in the hard moments or only around when things are easy. And when the answers to those questions point to absence, neglect, or emotional retreat, she no longer tolerates it. It takes emotional maturity to be in a relationship of any kind, romantic, platonic, or professional. It requires self-awareness, empathy, and the ability to engage even when it's uncomfortable. Emotionally unavailable people often avoid depth because they fear vulnerability. They shut down instead of showing up. They compartmentalize instead of communicating. And instead of confronting their own emotional baggage, they drag it into connections that leave others feeling empty and confused. The wise woman doesn't waste her time trying to unpack what they refuse to carry. She learns that love without presence is just performance. It might look good from the outside, it might satisfy the illusion of connection, but it does not feed the soul. It does not make her feel seen, and that is no longer acceptable to her. She's done explaining her needs to someone who listens but never hears. She's done offering depth to someone who only swims in the shallow end. And she's done chasing the idea of love when the reality is built on absence and inconsistency. Cutting off the emotionally unavailable is not cold-hearted. It's self-protective. It's understanding that not everyone is capable of meeting you where you are. And that doesn't make them bad people. It just means they are not your people. It means they're still on their own journey, figuring themselves out, avoiding their own truths. But the wise woman no longer waits for them to catch up. She's spent too long trying to be enough for people who don't even know how to be enough for themselves. Emotional unavailability teaches you to minimize your needs. It trains you to shrink. You become so used to doing the emotional labor that you forget you deserve reciprocity, that you deserve someone who reaches back, who asks how you're doing, and genuinely wants the answer. Someone who doesn't just show up when it's convenient, but stays when it's messy, raw, and real. The wise woman is no longer impressed by good intentions without action, or words that lack follow-through. She looks for alignment, for presence, for consistency, and when it's not there, she doesn't beg for it, she removes herself. Sometimes the emotionally unavailable are not even aware of their impact. They may not intend to harm, but harm still happens in the absence of emotional responsibility. Intent doesn't erase effect. And the wise woman stops trying to manage both. She no longer takes on the burden of emotional translation, trying to find meaning in someone's silence or loyalty in their inconsistency. She realizes that if she has to convince someone to care, to engage, or to stay, she's already losing parts of herself in the process. There is a deep loneliness that comes from being connected to someone who won't go beyond surface-level engagement. You're with them, but you're alone. You're talking, but nothing's being said. You're hoping, but nothing changes. And the longer you stay, the more you forget what it feels like to be emotionally nourished. But the wise woman remembers. She remembers that connection is meant to uplift, to comfort, to grow, not to confuse or diminish. And so she chooses distance over depletion, silence over begging, solitude over scarcity. There is healing in letting go of people who cannot offer emotional safety. There is power in choosing peace over performance. And there is wisdom in understanding that it's not your job to break down someone's emotional walls. It's your job to honor your own capacity, to protect your own heart, to recognize when you're pouring into a cup that refuses to be filled. A wise woman does not wait for emotional availability to magically appear. She does not cling to potential. She does not romanticize the fragments. She honors the fullness of who she is by walking away from those who refuse to meet her in the fullness of their own presence.